Alright, let's get started. Let's turn, get your Bibles, or U version. 1 Thessalonians 2:8. I don't know if it's in your booklets. Yeah, I didn't write in your booklets. Come on. So, there you go. I saved you a step. If it's in your booklets, it's my favorite. So, session 2. Now we're refreshed and awake. A little candy in our belly. This session is going to be all about sight, seeing. We are a very visual society. You haven't learned that yet. We are. More so maybe than any generation since the cavemen. I don't know what that says. But just like what we were talking about, I was just talking with some guys out there. Our students have a screen in front of them 24/7. 24/7. And if they don't have it in front of them, it's at least available. You know, our kids have TVs in their rooms where they have their phones with them at all times. And they're glued. Hearing is important to them, but seeing now, hearing alone, like there's no radio programs anymore. You know, like I can remember my mom and dad telling me about radio programs and how they listen to radio programs on the radio. And now it's foreign to me. And now, it's even more foreign to these students. Everything needs a picture, or everything needs a movie, a little clip. It's not all social media's fault. You can always do the chicken and the egg comparison there. Social media come around because kids were craving that, or kids craving it and so it came around. I think you can probably debate those things. But sight is very, very important. Like John already mentioned with listening, a lot of what we hear comes from what we see. So our seeing, our eyes are almost like a set of ears. Like what Eric said, in Elevate, if you weren't there, over half of our communication, over half of it is what we see. Less than half of it is what we say. That's the least amount of communication that happens, is just saying something. Tone brings a little more meaning to it, but what we see actually brings the most level of communication, according to the experts. So what we see communicates more than what we say or how we say it. How many of you are married or previously married? All right. How many of you have children, adopted or natural? All right. I know for me, I've got 2 little ones in my house. The 2 births and my wedding day are ingrained in my memory. And I can see it to this day. And those are days when love got redefined for me. When I saw Leanne coming down that aisle, I cried like a baby. It still hits me because I can see it. I'm there. Our eyes are so powerful. They trigger memories like that. Once I saw Hunter for the first time, in his little incubator. He had jaundice, so we had to put him under the ultraviolet lights. But you know, my whole world changed in a very impactful way. Those moments are frozen in my brain, and when I see things, it triggers those. Seeing my best friend in a beautiful gown, knowing that we're getting ready to start life's great adventure together. It's awesome. Seeing my boy, knowing that all of a sudden I'm responsible for another human being on this planet. It's a huge responsibility. But these events brought a new definition of love for me. Seeing Hunter especially made me understand John 3:16 and go, holy life. That God would give his one and only son. I love you guys, but there's no way. There's no way. And I thought it'd be different with Emily, because she's the daughter. But it's not different. It's that same love. 1 Thessalonians 2:8 says, Paul's writing to the Thessalonians, because we loved you so much, we were delighted to share with you not only the gospel of God, but our lives as well. This year especially, as we talk about everyone matters, we want to make sure that our students know how much we love them. We love them. as leaders of students, we have an awesome responsibility to share the gospel with them. The death, the burial, the resurrection of Christ, for the forgiveness of sins, the gift of the Holy Spirit, and the hope of eternal life. We all know the gospel. But we want our students to see the gospel in you, in their group, and in their world. They need to see it for it to connect. We have opportunity to love them like our own. And so we need to love them, not in a creepy way, not as the world defines love, but as Scripture defines love. We need to love them enough to not only share the gospel with them, not to just share our knowledge with them, but to share our very lives. That's what Paul's talking about, to share our very lives with them. They need to see us in the good times. They need to see us in the bad times. We need to be honest and sincere. Now we need to have that filter on their age level of what they're able to process, what they're not able to process, what they're able to handle, what they're not. But kids can handle a lot more oftentimes than we think they can. And there's some very serious stuff happening, even in our 6th grade life groups. And so kids are stronger than we think. And if we let them see us living out the gospel, you may have heard this, but the gospel isn't taught, it's caught. Meaning that we can do all the teaching in the world, and that's going to improve their knowledge, which is good. We need knowledge. But until they catch the passion and the connection, it's just knowledge. And it's not worth much. Bless you. In fact, I would suggest to you that was the Pharisees' problem. They had the knowledge, but they didn't have the gospel. They didn't have God like they thought they did. So we need to make sure that, first of all, our vertical relationship is right. And then horizontally, we need to understand that we are modeling for them. When we mess up, we need to own it and say, look, we messed up. I so much appreciate John a couple weeks ago in Elevate doing that. I messed up. That builds trust. When they see us fall and then how we handle that, it communicates a lot to them. And it's a good thing if we handle it well. Again, just let them know that this Christian thing, this Bible stuff, it's not just part of your life. It is life. It is your life. And if it's not your life, then we need to talk. and we need to get there. They need to be able to see it. We need to put their needs ahead of ours. And as a church, we've committed to loving God and loving others. And I see no better battleground to practice that than with our students. To show how they can love God and they can love others by the way we do it. As they see us do that, they will model and they will also start to be a light in their schools and their spheres of influence. Kind of like as Paul said, as you follow me, as I follow Christ, follow me. And the same can be said of us. Let's pray. Father God, I just thank you again just for these leaders. Father, you have given us sight. You have given us vision. Father, all throughout the Bible, you talk about where there's a lack of vision, the people perish. So Father, I just pray that you would give us a vision in a very literal sense, but also in a very spiritual sense. Give us a vision for what our groups can be, what our student ministry can be, through your power, and through your grace, and through your direction. Father, may we look for opportunities. May we see our students as they are, for who they are. May we see opportunities to speak into their lives, but also, Father, may we see opportunities to model for them what it looks like to follow Christ. Father, again, we're not up to the task. And we thank you for the Holy Spirit that's leading us and empowering us. And so, in Jesus' name, amen. Let's watch this video.
All right, no crying during those videos. Don't worry, they get worse. We're going to talk about the high school phases a little bit. And I say phases because there are at least 5 phases in high school. And there may be more. But there is at least 5 that we're going to go through. A high school student can be compared to a philosopher. Philosopher in the sense that a high school student is a skeptic through and through, and we'll talk about that. High school student is a thinker. They begin grasping their own thoughts, and so we need to organize those thoughts and give them a biblical worldview. A high school student is also a leader, and so we need to propel them into positions of leadership in any way that we can. We need to model for them a positive role model and a positive form of leadership. Life group leaders must create positive mobilization, moving them on, positive mobilization by leveraging momentum. There are all kinds of triggers in high school that we're going to be talking about, ways that we can work within the momentum that's already taking place, and checking motivation. That's something in high school that we've got to constantly be checking, is their motivation. Why are they doing what they're doing? Is it based upon themselves, or is it based upon Christ and based upon others, like Matt talked about, loving God and loving others? So we're going to talk about those 3 words, mobilization, momentum, and motivation. And there are 2 pages. You can see the first page there goes through the 5 phases that I believe are in high school. And then the next page talks about momentum and motivation. I just left some lines so you can take the notes as you wish. So first, mobilization. We're talking about moving them on to what's next. And if you're in 9th grade, if your students are in 9th grade, or your kids for that matter, once they're in 9th grade, there are 208 weeks in counting. That's all until graduation. 208 weeks. And this phase can be characterized by the word changes. There are all kinds of changes in their life. The average high school has 750 teenagers. I didn't do a demographic study. I didn't do an area study to see how many are in Whiteland and Greenwood and Center Grove. Center Grove has many more than that. 750 is in the average high school. 250 of those high school students are dating couples, and more than 50 options for extracurricular activities. And so the 9th grade student begins to really search for more specialized groups. Instead of being in a large group of middle school students, they start to search for more specialized groups. Freshmen gravitate towards where they are most accepted. So perhaps nothing will affect the trajectory of the next 4 years than in 9th grade, which is kind of scary. Where are the 9th grade leaders at? 9th grade leaders back here.
No pressure.
This is a very, very important time in a kid's life. And we as life group leaders are seeking those students who don't show up. Are we looking for those students who don't show up? Are we calling them? Are we texting them? Are we contacting their parents? Because they need a sense of belonging to our group. Because if they can feel like they belong as a freshman, the chances of them sticking for the rest of the 4 years are greatly increased. So there's all kinds of changes taking place. Personal responsibility kicks into overdrive because college is coming up. And so grades count more than ever before in their lives as freshmen. Now they will count more later on, but as freshmen, they've never realized how grades really do matter. And so we need to encourage the students. We need to celebrate their wins. 10th grade. 10th grade is next. We're moving them on to what's next. After 9th grade is is 10th grade, and there are 156 weeks in counting. And we can describe this phase in their life with one word, and that word would be independence. Independence. Sweet 16 means sweet freedom. And 16-year-old students are starting to get their driver's license, depending on how motivationally driven they are. Some of them don't want their driver's license, but chances are, as a sophomore life group leader, your house is going to start to begin looking really strange on Sunday nights because people are going to start driving to your life group. Now, this happens more when you're a junior, but it starts happening when you're a sophomore. And so the students start driving, they get more independent as a sophomore. Their future changes just a little bit. They get a little bit more skeptical at this age. They don't just want to know what you know. They want to know why you know what you know. And they question a little bit more the process. So they'll challenge the process, which is good because they become independent thinkers. So the days of, because I said so, are over as a sophomore student leader. So if you make a rule, be willing to be ready, be ready to be willing to say why you made the rule that you made. Because you can't just make rules anymore without having a basis for the rule that you made. So here's an idea for you. What if your students made the rules? What? Now, obviously, you're going to guide the process, but what if they made the rules and they wrote them down all together collectively, and they made a pact that we're going to live by the rules which we stated in this contract. Maybe everyone could sign the rules. You know, that'll give them a sense of ownership to the group. So that's 10th grade. And then 11th grade. We're moving on. 11th grade, 104 weeks and counting. We're getting less and less. Almost down to 100 weeks until graduation. One word to describe this phase is accomplish. Juniors are more ready than ever to be who they really are. The rapid influx of hormones has regulated just a little bit, and the fight for peer acceptance has subsided, and they become more confident than they were in the past. But they are more busy than they ever have been before. Many are just trying to survive when they're juniors. They're so involved in extracurricular activities. They're so involved in their school that they're just trying to stay afloat. So junior year is a time when we need to encourage them more than ever before and tell them that we, adults and students alike, need to set our priorities straight. Priorities are key to survival in 11th grade. And then you've got 12th grade, 52 weeks and counting. And there are actually two words that can sum up 12th grade, and that is, what's next? A senior comes in and does not, no matter how much he or she says they do not have everything figured out. But they want to know what's next. Even though they may think they know what college they want to go to or what they want to do after they graduate, even though they think they may know what they want to do with the rest of their life, they really don't. And a lot of them are scared. They no longer feel like a child. They may pull away from programs like we have on Sunday morning, but they lean into relationships more than ever before. And so this is a great time for us to capitalize on that and to build upon that momentum of relationships. And maybe not just meet. Mike Hausman was one of the best life leaders based around this principle. Don't just meet as a senior life group leader or really any grade for life group, but figure out other times in which you can meet. Go out for drinks. Go out for drinks, as in the soda variety. Go to Steak and Shake, go to Starbucks, go to different places, and Mike would have his guys over all the time, and they would watch UFC together. Just do things that match your demographic well. They need to know that you are there for them no matter what. And I believe that the reason that they draw away from programs, and I believe that that's partially the reason why there's such a dropout rate after graduation, because they're pulling away from institutionalized, what we think of as church, and they're leaning into relationships, which truly is the church. And so we need to capitalize on that. Seniors are baby adults. They may be legal, some of them almost if they're 17. They may be almost legal, but they still need you to hold their hand through this process. They need direction. They need to know where to go and what to do. And they need you whispering advice in their ears. So we need to help them realize that they are leaders in this student ministry. And one way that we do that is I created this thing called Senior Seminar, and that is where I get together with the seniors and I help them recognize two different principles. And we meet throughout the year about once a month, and I drive these principles in different ways for them. They need to realize, first of all, that they are leaders in our student ministry, and that they cannot pull away from our student ministry because they're leaving a legacy for the people to come, for the students to come. And so people will follow in their footsteps, no matter what they do, no matter how they act. They will follow in their footsteps. So they need to leave a good legacy. And then number two, they need to recognize what's next. And we need to get them planted into a church, no matter where they are, and get them involved in that church. And so those are things, as seniors, this is a crucial time. And we need to help them recognize those important principles. And then the next phase is what I call 13th grade. 13th grade, it's not recognized, but it is definitely a phase in their life. And this is where we stop counting. The graduation has happened, and they're moving on to what's now. Instead of what's next, they're moving on to what's now. And this is when they need you the most. You know, we've been building, and yeah, your students have needed you, but now is when they need you the most after graduation. They need care packages, they need visits, they need calls, they need handwritten letters. Maybe you could learn their school email address and write them emails as well. They need all these different forms and even more. Get creative and figure out ways that you can show them that even though they're graduated, that you're still with them. You still want to mentor them. We've had life group leaders who have gone to the different colleges and visited some of their students, and I think that is an incredible way to mentor them onto what's next, if you've got the time. You know, that takes a time commitment, but it'll show them that you truly do care. And so we don't just graduate students and leave them. We graduate students onto what's next, and we're with them. So we need to leverage that momentum. As a matter of fact, we're going to turn the page there. We're going to talk more about leveraging momentum. By the way, how many hours a day do you think parents have with kids? How many hours a day? Not very many.
30 minutes.
30 minutes?
2 hours.
Wow. Yeah. So
Right.
it actually changes as the student gets older. So like Brittany, you've got a little bit less than you do with Jacob. And if you've got older kids and younger kids, and it fluctuates. And it depends upon a lot of different variables. But Matt and I read this book, and a lot of the information that we get is from this book called Phase. It's by Reggie Joyner. And he would argue that if you've got a preschool kid, you get 12 hours a day with that kid. 12 hours a day. You may argue differently, like you're arguing against Reggie. If you've got an elementary kid, then that number drastically decreases to 6 hours. It's 6 hours a day with your elementary kid. If you've got a middle school kid, the number is decreased to 4 hours a day. So unless you're, oh no, you've got a high school.
Yeah, I was thinking high school. When
well, and you're about right. Reggie would say that if you've got a high school kid, you've got 2 hours with that kid. But again, that depends on different variables based upon how many extracurricular activities and how they handle homework and different things like that with their friends and their social life. Reggie would say 2 hours with high school students. And so the idea is whether it is 30 minutes or 2 hours or 6 hours or whatever it may be, we've got to make that time count and be strategic with our time and leverage momentum so that we can use the time that we have in a productive way. See, parents, this was something in the book, and Matt and I found out that both of us were saying this, and so we're going to say it a couple different times. Parents are not really raising children. Parents are raising adults. That's something that we've got to recognize. We're not raising children. We're raising adults. And high school is a time that LifeGroup leaders need to implant leadership into students who are hungry to lead. We remain the leader, and we expect ourselves to speak to the students when they want to be the leaders. And if we implant leadership principles and leadership values and leadership responsibilities into these high school students, they can go so much further in life, whether it's in Christian service or whether it's in a secular world. Either one is important if we're devoted to spreading our influence to the next generation. So there's two things that can happen when you implant leadership into the next generation. And the first one is the student leader internalizes the message better, right? If you teach something, you learn it even better. If you're a teacher or you teach in any way, then you know that. You create a lesson or you teach a lesson and you learn it better. And so our students will internalize that message even better. And then number two, the student leader acquires a life skill that will outlast us. When we're old and gray, some of us are already gray.
Some of us are old.
No one in here's old. Come on. When we're no longer their leaders, when we're no longer their life leaders, the leadership principles that we implant into their lives will outlast us. So put them in charge, and that will create momentum that will last forever. A great resource for you guys to download. You can write this down, you can go ahead and download it, is Charades. Charades. Charades is it's kind of like a heads up type game where you put it up here on your forehead and it says a word, but you've got to pay for that one where they guess it or you guess it by them acting it out, and then you put your head down and up like that and it flips to the next one, or you can skip it by going back or vice versa, I forget how it is. You've got to pay for that one. Charades is free. So I want to encourage you guys to download that one. You can play it any time.
How do you spell charades?
It is C-H-A-R-A-D-E-S. And then there's an exclamation point at the end. So it's charades, exclamation point.
And you can also make your own too, so like for a lesson, you can make your own.
Yeah. It's a great idea. You know, Becky sends out those lessons. Modify those lessons and create games yourself for those lessons and match your demographic based upon your needs that Becky sends out.
John, it's funny that you didn't know that you can make up charades yourself.
What?
Brilliant.
What's that?
I mean, we used to play charades all the time until we made up
we just
ourselves.
run-
It just-
Right. But I mean, it's a free app on a phone. If you're an old geezer like you were.
That's what I said, some of it's horrible.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Yeah. Okay, so let's move on to motivation. This is the last section, and then Matt's going to get up here and talk about orange philosophy. With motivation, we've got to check motivation. Motivation is the heart of everything that we as leaders do and everything that our students do. We have learned as adults that our motivation needs to be right, although many times it's not. Many times it's self-seeking. But most of the time, I would argue that our students' motivation is messed up. You know, unfortunately, we live in a selfie-saturated society. And in that culture, students' views are skewed in a way that points direction to themselves. So there are 3 positive motivating factors of student leaders. That's my heart's desire as student leaders. So a lot of what I talk about is developing leaders, and I hope that that'll pass on to you as well, and we can all develop these student leaders together. 3 positive motivating factors of student leaders. The first one is this: high school students need to learn to be outwardly focused. Outwardly focused. They need to learn, no matter what grade they're in. 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade, but especially in high school. They've got to learn to be outwardly focused. More often than not, high school students are motivated by what they can get instead of what they can give. We live in a selfie-saturated world, like I said, and there is a selfie epidemic out there. And so we need to get our students focused more on service projects, caring for others within our group. And what are we doing to build other people up and not direct attention back on ourselves? That's what we need to get our student leaders to be mindful of. Secondly, high school students need to learn the gospel. Oh my goodness. And Marty and I were talking about this, and that's where Marty, this is actually Marty's message right now. I'm preaching Marty's sermon right now. That our students have got to learn the gospel, and especially, even more so as they get older and older into high school. Too often they explain Christianity by happiness, and that's what Marty said. You know, and that is just detrimental to the faith. And these students are going to become the elders of the next generation. And so what are we doing to help them realize that the gospel has got to be preached? And the gospel isn't always pretty. Now, it's something that can give us incredible joy, but the gospel message is things like you've got to die to yourself, you know, to truly live. You know, the gospel message is an acronym, and you can write this down if you want to, but you'll probably, I'm going to be talking more about this next year as we're in year 2 of Connect. I'm going to hit this a lot. The gospel message is an acronym. The first word is God. God created us to be in relationship with Him. Second word is our. Our sins separate us from God. And then the S in gospel says sins cannot be removed by good deeds. The P in gospel says paying the price, Christ died and rose again. The E in gospel says everyone who puts their trust in Him, their faith in Him, if you want to use a church word, has eternal life. in the L in gospel says life that's eternal starts now and lasts forever. We've got to be teaching our kids that. We've got to have them learn the gospel and be able to articulate the gospel. We're going to be taking a trip. It's going to be for middle schoolers and high schoolers, and it's going to be in April. I'd like to encourage you to be a part of this trip if you can. April 8th and 9th, we're going to go to Dare to Share. We've gone to that before, and it was incredible. This one's going to be in Chicago, April 8th and 9th, middle school and high school. They're going to learn the gospel, and they're going to learn how to articulate the gospel, and they're going to learn how to share their faith with their friends. It's more than just a conference where it's like, yay God! This is more of an equipping type of a conference where they're learning how to share their faith. And so it's going to be really good. And then thirdly, moving on. Sorry, that's kind of what I'm passionate about. High school students need to know the power of multiplication. Love this. They need to learn the power of multiplication. You know, you haven't truly made a disciple until you make a disciple. That's the facts. We think that we're doing discipleship. Well, are we? Because we haven't truly done discipleship if they're not going and making more disciples. The DNA of Jesus was multiplication. Let me illustrate, and Matt and I learned this the other day, the power of multiplication. And you can apply this to any area of leadership. How thick would the 50th fold of a piece of paper be? Think about that. If you folded a paper 50 times, how thick would it be? Just give me some answers. How thick do you think it would be? 50 folds.
Half an inch.
Huh? Half an inch?
Yeah.
Okay.
3.5 inches.
3.5 inches.
I think it's physically impossible.
Quite.
Well, it is
Yeah, I think it's
possible,
physically
but
quite a bit more than half an inch is 3.5 inches.
Yeah.
So I mean, you're jumping a lot here.
Yeah.
He's
Who thinks-
optimistic.
Are you assuming that it can be folded?
If
If
can,
it could be.
I'm talking theory here.
Yeah, we're talking about just thickness of paper.
Yep. How thick would it be?
How about 2 feet?
What?
2 feet.
Did you answer no?
I said it was bigger. Bigger.
Eric said 24 inches.
2 feet, which is, I mean, we're getting up there.
I'm thinking like 10 pounds, or what's the paper? Never mind. 20
Dude, I didn't know
pounds
Oh, yeah, John's talking about your indigo paper, like
Right,
it's in the
right, and I
Bible.
wasn't even
The
gonna-
very thin.
I wasn't
Oh,
even
wow.
going to go there. I wasn't even going to say that. I'm just talking any kind of paper. Like Matt and I, when we heard this illustration, he said an indigo paper, which is a thin piece of Bible paper. You know what I'm saying?
Holy pages.
Holy pages.
So, anyone else want to say another number?
I know.
I think it's bigger. I think it's more closer to Eric's actually.
You think it's more than like?
Yeah.
You think it's more like 24
I think
inches?
it's closer to the 12 inches plus even though it's in
You think it's bigger than that?
Okay, let's hear it.
Here we go. Fold a piece of paper 50 times. This is the power of multiplication, guys. It is 17 million miles thick.
I was a little.
What?
17
Over my
million.
head. I don't understand what's coming.
That is the distance.
I'm not like 6th graders.
Listen, that is one piece of paper folded 50 times. That's the distance to the moon and back 35 times. That's the power of multiplication. And that is the power of us spreading what we believe to our few, and them realizing that they can spread their belief to their few, and the multiplication keeps on going. You see, there is a big world out there, but when we multiply our effectiveness, we can do so much more than we could do alone. And so we've got to get our students to realize that. So tell your students that. Give your students that illustration, because it is.
Be ready to explain it to them.
It is powerful. So what we're dealing with here, and I'm just gonna. We're running out of time, and Matt's still got a section. What we're dealing with is exponents. So we're going to the certain number of power, to the certain power. So we're dealing with exponential growth.
What was that
So,
number,
17 million miles thick. That's the 50th fold of a piece of paper. 17 million miles thick. So, here's the point, and then it's going to be Matt's turn. You don't have much time. Your students, listen, your students use their smartphone more in 1 week than they will attend your group in 1 year. That is shocking to me. And so we've got to set the priority, because what we do with our few could have an effect that goes way beyond what we could ever hope or imagine.
John, can I say one thing based on what you were just talking about? Some of what we forget is in high school, we've got to define success differently. As parents, we define it by grades a lot of times, by looking for them to find their career.
Hey Marty, will you come up here so that you can be heard on the camera?
I don't really want to do that.
There's other LifeGroup leaders that want to hear this.
I want this to be real quick, and you guys know this, but success from us as life group leaders, we need to communicate its relationships. Because what really messes us up as adults? Things like divorce, things like not having that relationship with Christ. I mean, we are the people in their lives that need to push that as this is a successful life. Whether you get a college degree, whether you got straight A's and a scholarship, those are all important things to us as parents for sure. But we've really got to set them up for true success is living life eternal now, starting today, not waiting until we die. And so I'm just saying, to get this motivation and momentum, we've got to motivate them to the right thing, which is by us helping them define success differently than, okay, so now I'm not going to get a college degree, so I'm a failure. No. How's your relationship with Christ? How are the relationships with other people? And if we do that, the more we can do that, the greater chance they have to live the lives that God designed them for. Because God didn't design us all to be engineers or doctors or successful in those ways. So that's my 2 cents.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thanks, Marty. Man, I don't want to make a slave for it. I could talk about multiplication, guys, all day. Jeff Myers, Andy Schroeder, and Jeff Shields poured into my life. And they poured into 3 of my friends' life. All 4 of us are in ministry today. And we are impacting lives. To think of how much influence that person had. Another illustration the guy used this last week was, would you rather have $1 million a day for 30 days? Or would you rather have $1 a day that would double the next day to 2, double the next day to 4 for 30 days? And you already know the answer because we're already talking about this. We're all like, $30 million, that's a lot of money. If you chose that second option where the dollar multiplies itself every day, you get $4.04 billion more by the end of the 30 years than if you just took the 30 million, which is a nice chunk of change. It's crazy how multiplication works. If we can truly make disciples that make disciples, man, that's a win. That's where we want to head. So, orange, to see. Life group leaders see opportunities to deepen relationships with students, which leads to deeper relationships with Christ. This is what it's all about. We have to use our eyes and our minds to see opportunities to deepen relationships. Life group leaders need to see students for who they are. Even though we have a few students, it's so easy to see the forest and forget the trees. Each tree in our group has a story, has a history, has a process, has a unique future, a unique calling, I believe, from God to fulfill the Great Commission. We need to see our group as our church. We talked about this a little bit. The church is not a place, it's a group. Any believers that gather together anywhere is an opportunity to be the church. We're a church right now. The people at GCC are your church. Our student ministry is part of your church. Your life group is your church. It's his church, but you know what I mean. So we need to see them where they are. We need to see them where they are seen. Sporting activities, artsy stuff, in the community. Watch their movies, listen to their music, watch their TV shows, follow their favorite celebrities, read their books. And this is a challenge, I know. This is not what we like. This is stuff I don't like. And we have to be careful. We have to be very careful in this, because it's one thing for us to do this on our own. But when we start to watch it or listen to it or read it collectively, all of a sudden it's moved from an observation to an endorsement. We need to be careful what we endorse as leaders. Taking all of your group to go see American Sniper may not be the best move, all right? Because all of a sudden you moved from being in touch with what they're watching, which they're going to watch it anyway, right? You don't understand. All of a sudden now you're endorsing it because you're leading a trip to there. And so that's a very big step. You got to be careful with that kind of stuff. And you got to be on the same page with the parents and all that kind of stuff. But at the same time, we need to be relevant to these students. Now, that's not possible. We're not going to be 100% relevant. We are not teenagers. We are not going to relate to them on that level. That's just not possible. But we need to let them know that we're concerned, that we love them enough that we're going to know their world a little bit. The hardest one for me was Minecraft. I hated Minecraft. Hate Minecraft. But that's where a lot of our guys are at. And I had to get on there and tinker around and figure out what's going on. I'm like, this is stupid. This is stupid. Now, I'm a big video gamer. And this is ridiculous. But it's where our guys are. And so for me to be able to minister to those guys, I've got to be able to speak their language. It's like being a missionary. It really is. You guys are missionaries. In your mission field, any good missionary studies the culture of the mission field. We've got to do the same. Now, that being said, don't worry about being so relevant that you look like a student, you talk like a student, you act like a student. I'm not saying go get skinny jeans and get your iPad out all the time, okay? That's not what I'm saying. But hopefully you guys are understanding that we need to see them where they are seen. We need to see them where they are seen. We need to understand their culture and know how we can work in their culture. But more than that, more important than that, is that leaders just need to be seen. We need to be seen as leaders. Good leaders are present. I stole this from John. But great leaders are fat. F-A-T. Good leaders are present. Great leaders are fat. It's just an acronym. So don't get too worried. Here's a Beachbody coach husband saying you need to be fat. But we need to be faithful at regular times. We need to be available at a moment's notice. Faithful at regular times, available at a moment's notice. And we need to be teachable, not know-it-alls. We need to be teachable, not just the teacher. And faithfulness, it's the law of the process. Each student, we've talked about this, has a unique journey. They have a unique calling. We need to respect their process. We were talking a lot today in generalities. And we were like, well, my kids don't really fit that. My kid kind of fit, no. That's why they're generalities. Each kid is specific. He has specifics to them. And so we need to be faithful to that. The trust that they're going to build in you takes time. There's just no other way to build trust. There's just no other way. Sometimes you can have instant trust by position. You have some of that by being an adult, by being a LifeGroup leader. You have a level of trust already, just by your position. But that trust can grow if you faithfully love on these kids. Consistency over time is the best way. Don't overreact to major sin issues or major doubts. We talked about that. Here's one I had to learn. Don't always give the quick answer. You may know it, but when you always give the quick answer to their questions, it's like, it kind of commutes that it was a dumb question. Like, we always say there's no dumb questions, but you're always giving, oh, well, here's the answer to that. That's communicating that, well, maybe that was a dumb question. Maybe I shouldn't ask my next question. We don't want to build those kinds of environments. But at the same time, don't leave questions unresolved. Even if there isn't a cut and dried answer, land on a place of faith. Land on a place of that, you know, Jesus is going to sort all this out for us one day. And there's going to be a lot of light bulbs in heaven. And all of a sudden you're like, oh, I get it now. We just got to trust that that's part of our faith. Another thing we got to do is celebrate students equally. And that's hard to do. As much as we try to fight against favoritism, we all have our favorite students. We all have the ones that are getting it. And it's like, awesome. But we need to celebrate all of them. All right? No matter what level they're at, each step is a big step that they take. And so we need to celebrate equally. Keep private issues private. In group, don't be afraid to say, let's talk about that later. Okay? That's a great opportunity to say, this may not be for public consumption, let's talk about this later, and then if we need to come back to the group, we can. That's a good safeguard there. Each student will trust you at different levels, in different amounts of times. And again, we just have to respect the process. Be faithful in how you respond to their process. Orange philosophy is big on this. If they can't be their Monday through Saturday self with you, then they're going to have a hard time applying the faith that you're trying to teach them on Sundays. If they can't share doubts, if they can't share doubts in your group, they're going to dwell on them privately. If they can't ask you questions, they will ask someone questions. And if they don't admit their struggles to someone, then they will never experience the power of bringing things into the light, which facilitates freedom, forgiveness, growth. Because we know the Creator, we can help a student discover their creative potential. Because we've been welcomed and forgiven, we can welcome and forgive. We can help every student find their place, regardless of their failures. Because we trust in a risen Savior, we can offer hope for a better future. When we make students a weekly priority, something remarkable happens both in our community and in our church. That's why we are passionate about what we do in students' lives. Not just for the multiplication, but because I really believe that that's where I want to leave my legacy. And I know a lot of you signed up to do this because you want to leave a legacy. We just can't thank you enough. The results don't come immediately. You don't get frustrated. Be patient. Many of the strongest trees take the longest time to grow. We may struggle to define, measure success. What Marty was talking about, it's hard for us to measure success. What's a win? How do we know? I don't have all those answers. But I know that the more we invest in our kids, the better chance they have to grow into strong trees. So make the phone call. Text the text. Send the birthday shout out on social media. Go to the game, the concert, or the musical as often as you can. It may be the best thing you've ever done for them, better than any lesson you taught them. These small connections instill trust, and once that trust leads deeper, you can lead them deeper into their relationship with Christ. And just on this orange stuff too, if you're not on the parent side, then you're not really in the end on the student side. I don't always agree with our parents, okay? Well, we have to support. It's our God-given responsibility to support our parents because they lead the families. And so we've got to support them. That's hard to do sometimes. I know it's hard to do. But we have to. Even if a parent isn't a believer, they are still a parent. And the Bible says respect and honor your parents. It doesn't say if they follow Christ. It just says respect and honor your parents. So we have to model that and be on the same page. And again, communicate with parents. That's an important part of your role, is to communicate with the parents. Keep it going. Always keep them in the loop. Let them know. Now, there are some things that need to stay in group, okay? And that's a hard line to discern as well. But over-communicate. You can't communicate too much. Be available in crisis. Again, when these cultural changes collide with physical, mental changes, it results in crises. And so now, I'm not saying you have to be available 24/7. We all need to sleep. But make sure that your students know that they can reach you when they really need you. And realize that their crisis to them may not be a crisis to you, but it's a crisis to them. And that's what matters. It doesn't matter if it's a crisis to you. You need to be there for them. But then you can also help them learn what a true crisis is, and that losing your iPhone for a day is not a crisis, okay? You don't need to call me at 3 a.m. because you can't find your, well, I don't know how they call you about, but you know what I mean. We can help them kind of see that, okay, maybe this wasn't such a big deal because drama, right? Hormones, all that stuff. We need to be available regularly. This means that we need to be prepared with our lessons on Sunday nights. We need to be awake and make sure that they are too. I know it's hard because it's at the end of the day and sometimes we don't have the energy. But if we're not enjoying group, if we are not having fun at group, I can guarantee you 100% of the time the kids are not going to be having fun at group. And we're not just here to have fun. But if they don't have fun, they're going to check out and eventually they'll stop coming. That's just the nature of the beast. So in our groups, we need to balance social time with study time. Every group's different. And I would say as a whole, as a general rule, middle school, you guys need to be heavy on social. Heavy on social. Very light on the study, which makes our study even more important. We've got to make sure we get the big rocks in. But in high school, they're able to kind of focus more. You can start giving them some more meat and start really discussing stuff. But it's just what we've seen is probably good to watch that balance of social and stuff. All right, be teachable. You guys know this probably better than I do, especially those of you who have done this for a while. You need to learn from them. They will teach you things that you don't even understand, that you don't know. You need to learn about them. You need to see yourself as a disciple maker, not a babysitter, a relationship pursuer, not a grocery store, an influencer, not just a volunteer filling a slot. I hope none of you ever feel like you're just a volunteer filling a slot. As we are teachable, we need to never stop worrying about Jesus. Again, once we think we've arrived at that place where we've got it all figured out, you have nothing figured out. Never stop worrying about yourself. Never stop worrying about your students. Make sure you see them in their process. And remember, when you are being seen by students, it's good to be fat. It's very good to be fat. And that's what we want you to be. It is 12:03, so it is right on time for lunch. So I'll pray for us, and then we will, I think we just go down, don't we?
Yep.
All right, so we'll head out this way and go downstairs. Father God, we just thank you so much. Again, just thank you for all these leaders. Father, we have a huge responsibility and task to invest, to mentor, to train, to disciple these students that you have given us and that you have put in our path. And again, Father, we're not up for the task, but we thank you for the Holy Spirit that gives us power. Father, we thank you that we can be seen. Father, it's just so overwhelming sometimes to realize that our students are watching every move we make. And so, Father, we just pray that we would be good models. That you would help us when we fall to get back up and to make things right. Father, thank you for these leaders taking the day out. And we also thank you for Allendale letting us come here. We thank you for the food that they've prepared. We pray you bless it, bless the hands that prepared it. And we just have a good time eating together and just spending time together. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.